Hello, good evening, and welcome to HT Auto. It has been a very exciting week in the Indian automobile industry with a lot of launches, and it's that time of the week again when we are joined by our auto expert. It's time to introduce once again Murad Ali Baig. Uh, he's an auto expert and an industry veteran. Murad, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Well, happy to be here.
Brilliant. Murad, before we take a deep dive into the questions that we've received from our readers, let me just begin by asking you about the flurry of launches, both in the motorcycle scooter segment as well as in the passenger vehicle segment. We've seen the likes of the Mercedes launching vehicles. Today we have the Alcazar launching from Hyundai. We have Ducati. We have BMW. A lot of movement now happening in the Indian auto industry space. How do you read into all that's happening?
There's a terrible boredom that has taken place with all these lockdowns. And now, therefore, people are just wanting to break out. They want to break out and to have a ball, just want to get out. Last week, the road from Chandigarh to Simla was crowded and jam-packed with log jams of people desperate to get away from the planes to get to Simla. And the same thing must have happened to many other destinations as well. But as with also the cars, now you're fed up with the same boring old car. You say, now let me get something different. Let me get the best I can. I've saved up a lot of money. I've not been traveling much this last month or two. So let me have a ball. And the car companies and bike companies also realize that the customer doesn't mind paying a bit extra. It's a huge moment when a customer goes out and buys a car or a bike, and therefore when he buys it, he said, "No, I'm not going to afford more than so much." But when he gets into the showroom and is offered the car or bike that he wanted, and then he's said, "Well, why don't you buy this one? It has this feature and that feature and the other feature," and the temptation is gigantic.
Right. In unprecedented and complicated, complex times such as the ones we're living in currently, many car manufacturers say that they are updating their product portfolio. That, they say, is what is going to sort of jumpstart things for them. Does that really work for the consumer as well? Are newer products in current times of COVID really the pull factor to get people to the showrooms?
Well, all the car companies have had a bad month. The last 3 or 4 to 6 weeks have been very bad for the car industry. The dealer showrooms are having very few footfalls. The number of people coming out to buy have been down a lot. So as a result, every car company wants to come out with a bang. They want to make a big impact if they can. And therefore, they're putting as many goodies as they can, all the gadgets and goodies that they can get hold of, they shove them in. And some of them are being offered at a reasonable price. Though I was a bit surprised today that the Alcazar from Hyundai, while beautifully specced with every damn thing, is not cheap. It's quite expensive.
About the new launches, how do you see it in the industry? But something that you just cannot take away from the equation in current times is the pre-owned vehicle segments. Now, therefore, the first question, the user question that we have for you is what we received from Instagram. Somebody wants to know the 5 key things, 5 of the biggest things that he should look forward to, should make a special note of when he's out there to buy a pre-owned vehicle.
When you're buying a second-hand car, you've got to be a little careful. But because anybody who's looking for a second-hand car, anyone selling a second car will try and touch up the paint to try and do all sorts of things. So you've got to be very careful. But I say the 5 things that you've got to look out for. First of all, you've got to look to see if there's any sign of accident damage. Because if there's accident damage, it can affect the whole stability of your car, and your ride and comfort and everything else can go for a 6. So therefore, the simplest thing is to go down and look on both sides of your car, from the front and the back, to see if there's any what you call bulging of the sheet metal at any point. If there is, look at it carefully and see, and also look at the paint, because very often when a fresh paint is being put on, there's a slight telltale in the colors between the original color and a touch-up job that's done later. So the first is basically look at the outside. Number two, if you know enough about a mechanic, get under the suspension or get a mechanic. Any half-decent mechanic can look at the suspension and look for well marks. Are there any well marks under the wheels or under the engine, or which would show that there might have been an accident? So these things are quite important. Number two, of course, one of the things that you look at is the mileage. Now, the new electronic odometers are pretty trustworthy, and they're not very easy to fiddle with unless you've got a real expert. But the point of the matter, there are other signs. You can see the wear and tear on the brake pedals and the clutch and the accelerator pedals. If the rubber is looking nice and fresh, then you can be sure that the mileage has been doctored and covered up. So therefore, you better look at the wear of the rubber parts. Look at the condition of the way of putting your feet on the car, as to whether the carpet has been worn out or not. Now, very often they've got a rubber carpet or a plastic carpet also, which is replaced. But look under it. If the original carpet underneath it is looking worn, that means the car's had a lot of mileage. So these are the things that you've got to first look at. Now, you have to remember that all the new cars have a very good engine life, a very long engine life. So therefore, you shouldn't be scared if a car has done 40,000, 50,000 kilometers in 4 or 5 years, because today's cars will do 200,000 kilometers without any basic trouble to the engine. Of course, there'll be other things like rubber parts and plastic parts and things which will go. So therefore, these are some of the first things that you look at when you are looking at a second-hand car. The third thing is you've got to carefully look at the papers. Now, the papers will obviously look perfect, but you've got to double-check them. Now, has the car come from an authorized dealer? Is there any record in the service manual? Now, service manual has not been updated for 3 years or 4 years. So therefore, but anyway, if you phone the car dealer from where the car was bought, which will be on the record, you would probably be able to get it traced quite easily that this car used to belong to so-and-so, and it's gone from 1, 2, 3, 4 different owners before it's come to you. Now, if it's come from one owner right through, and you're satisfied that it's come from one owner, because you know it's an army colonel who doesn't go changing his car.
Murad, let me just interrupt you for just a second here. In all of this whole process can seem a little bit intimidating to the average car buyer. Would you then suggest that there are so many of these certified companies now who may charge a premium, but at the end of the day, there is peace of mind if you're purchasing a vehicle from them rather than your local neighborhood mechanic? Is that a good enough suggestion, or there is a whole lot of trust factor here? So if you trust your local mechanic, then
there's no doubt that the Maruti True Value or the second-hand car system that's been set up by some of the other companies, as well as second-hand specialists like 2024, Car 24, and so on, they will give you a fairly good pre-check, and they'll double-check all these things that I've told you, but they will also take a price for it. In other words, if you were to buy directly from a customer, and the price is, for argument's sake, 2 lakhs of rupees, if it comes through one of the authorized companies, it'll cost you at least 5 or 10% more. But you at least get the surety that you've got a good comfort that there'll be nothing wrong. But there are other things to look at. For example, the trouble spot you have in a car are the tires. Are the tires in good condition? You easily checked. Now, tires have a long memory, and therefore, if there's anything wrong with them, if they've been badly treated, they're liable to break. So if there's excessive wear, or the tire compound appears to be too hard, it's better to be doubly sure about it and take a check on that. Of course, the batteries will be changed every 2 years or so. So therefore, if the battery has done its service, well, that's par for the course. You will have to get a new battery, and don't ever think of getting a second-hand battery. You can get second-hand tires, but I do not recommend it. Tires are the biggest source of trouble, and they're also one of the most important things to have in your car. And therefore, if your tires are in bad shape, your car will wobble. The suspension will not be good. You will not be happy with it.
Understood. In all of this, let me just add a question of my own. Is it then a good idea also to neither go for a new vehicle nor go for a second hand, and instead something that's relatively new here in India, the subscription model? A lot of companies, car companies, are offering their vehicles on the subscription-based model. Can you just, for the benefit of our viewers and readers, explain what that subscription model is? What is it in it? What's in it for customers?
But all new ideas, all new schemes obviously have something to do with it, other the car companies will not market them. But you have to take it with a pinch of salt.
Moving on from there, the second question that we have for you today from our reader is, government has made all PUC certificates uniform across the country. Is it now possible to have a car that's, say, registered in Delhi to get a pollution certificate from Mumbai? And is there any liability for cops? I mean, for people to be stopped?
It's very difficult. The state RTOs are very reluctant to share their domain or their turf with any other state. I have personal experience of this, of trying to get a car registered in Goa. Now, it's quite easy to do, but it costs a bomb. For a Maruti, for a Tata Nano, the cost of changing the registration from Delhi to Goa will cost me about 30,000 rupees for a car that's worth 50,000 rupees. So it doesn't make much sense.
All right. The next question is about nitrogen in car tires. What are the benefits and the demerits of getting your tires filled with nitrogen?
It's all benefit, and it's not expensive. To get nitrogen in all your tires, what they do is you drive your car to mostly Indian Oil outlets, the outlets which have a nitrogen charging unit, and they will deflate all the air out of your tires and then pump pure nitrogen in it. Now, the normal, ordinary, common garden air is, in any case, nearly 80% nitrogen, but it's 21% oxygen and a little bit of other unwanted gases. Now, oxygen is the one thing that leaks very slowly and gently through the porous surface of the there's a special lining that's gone on the inside of tubeless tires to prevent the air from escaping. But a tiny bit of air does escape. So therefore, over a period of maybe 2 or 3 months, even if a tire is perfect and doesn't have a puncture, it's likely to lose pressure very, very slowly. Of course, if it has a puncture, it's a different story. But now with nitrogen, nitrogen is inert gas, and it doesn't leak through the rubber. So therefore, once you fill it, it's likely to stay filled for a much longer period. Number 2, it compresses better. So the suspension of your car will feel better. You get a slightly better ride when you're going over potholes and bumps.
Right. But what does that mean for fuel efficiency? Does it have a positive impact on mileage as well?
And the cost of it is hardly, for a full set of 5 tires, it'll probably cost you 500 rupees. So that's really nothing for a long-term investment, because you would not need to do it again for a long time.
Right, but are there any benefits in terms of mileage, or is it too marginal?
The definition, it's supposed to give you slightly better mileage because your tire pressure will be constant for a longer period. But the difference is so small that you're unlikely to notice it as a significant advantage.
So primarily nitrogen for tires for a slightly enhanced suspension, and when you don't have to get a refill every so often. So clear benefits as far as nitrogen for tires are concerned. The next question that we have is about fuel adulteration. This is a sort of a recurring question that a lot of readers keep having. Uh, what is the best way to personally check for fuel adulteration? Uh, the reader says, I'm taking a trip to rural Himachal soon, and I want to ensure that the fuel is of top quality. Is it possible for us to get a sample, and what should we look for in a
Well,
sample of, say, a half a liter or a liter?
it's not very practical to carry a kit and to do the actual measurements of the density of fuel at different places. It's possible, but it's not a very practical thing. The sensible thing to do is the thing that I always do when I travel if I'm traveling up country into remote areas, is I always take a fuel fill in a big city in a crowded place where there are lots of cars. If petrol pump, a fuel depot has a number of regular customers, it dare not fool around with this thing because somebody will complain. If I get a half a tank full of dud fuel when I'm driving between Delhi and Nainital, I'm not going to go back and complain to the customer that the car is not running quite properly or something like that. I'll just say, chalo, let it go, carry on, as long as it doesn't behave too badly. But if I go to a place, a very well patronized petrol pump, fuel pump in a bigger town, let's say Haldwani, Muradabad, Rampur, any of these places, the bigger places, then where there are a lot of local customers who are patronizing it, then the petrol pumps dare not fool around because they dare not get complaints which will result in their being suspended or being losing their license.
Right. Right. So the best option if you're taking a trip, especially to the rural parts of India, is to get a tank full at a big town or a city where there are a lot of local customers. I think we have time for just one more question. We'll quickly put that across. Does buying a plug-in hybrid make more sense than buying an all-electric car in India? And to add to that, what kind of options and costs are involved?
Well, if a pure electric car obviously it costs a lot. It costs because the most expensive thing are the imported lithium-ion batteries, which are imported and which carry a fairly decent customs duty. Now, these make them extremely expensive. But if you use a hybrid, then they are still using a battery, but you're using much less load of the cost of the battery pack. So and therefore the hybrid it works. The electric motor in your powertrain, along with the petrol diesel powertrain that's already working, and therefore it kicks in and gives a boost, so you get improved fuel efficiency and so on. Sure, hybrid will put up your cost slightly, but on the other hand, you get double benefit. One, that you get slightly lower fuel costs, and number two, you will get the feeling that you're doing something good for the environment.
Right, but hybrids, plug-in hybrids generally tend to have a range of, what, say, 30, 40, maximum of 50 kilometers. So in that sense, is there a benefit, an economical benefit of having one? Because let's face it, to be very honest, plug-in hybrids are not very affordable in India.
A lot of companies have launched hybrids, and they've been quite successful. Customers have not had no reason to complain, and therefore it's rolling out not as a dramatic success, but as a success regardless.
All right. Murad, once again, it's been very insightful. I sincerely hope that everyone who had questions and those were addressed, and everyone watching, if your question was not taken in this particular episode, please be sure to tune in into the next episode. We'll be very happy to take those questions next time. For now, this is all the time that we have. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. And the special thanks to Murad for once again taking the time out.
Thank you all.